but I mean, it's giants come in all different shapes. But we're looking at David and Goliath, and here we are in 1 Samuel 17, verses 20 to 24. And let me just read them to you. And David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper. He was with his daddy, looking after his daddy's sheep. And he took the provisions. He was told to take bread, cheese, up to his brothers who were encamped with Saul to go do battle. And he took the provisions and went, as Jesse had commanded him, that's his daddy. And he came to the encampment as the hosts were going out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. I don't think it was hoorah, because that's an American thing, so I don't, anybody have an idea what they might have been shouting? You! Well, there's that. I think that was Goliath's line. You! Because all the boys are running. I actually sat and done something. I wonder what they would have been shouting, and just, I'm not going there. I don't want to get sidetracked. But anyway, where was I? Oh, yes, you were reading the Bible. And Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage and ran to the ranks. And he went and he greeted his brothers. As he talked with him, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came out of the ranks of the Philistines, and he spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, they fled from him and were much afraid. So here we have the two armies facing off one another. And it's warriors amongst warriors. And Goliath steps out. And all of a sudden, we have this boy, as we know, it's a shepherd boy, David, who decides, I'll have a piece of him. He makes a decision. It seems like an instant thing when he steps out, no matter about his size, no matter about his weaponry, he just steps up to the challenge. All of a sudden, he's going, I'm going to fight him. It's interesting because the army are all there and they're saying, this isn't my fight. Because as we read in the text, they were all running, they were hiding, they were getting offside. So this boy says, this is my fight. And the army, the trained people, the people who were taking their money for being in the army were saying, ain't my fight. They were happy to come every day, every morning, and they would march down and have their war cry, and they say, not fighting him. So you just get this contrast. And often God brings contrast into the Bible that you stop and think about it and realize, here's a contrast. And all these guys are looking and they're saying, well, I'm going to fight him and him and him and him. And they went through the whole army, came to Goliath, not touching him, I'm out of here. Somewhere they weren't ready to go, and this is really a life question. I think this is something that God has left tucked away as much as in the big story, but the question that he's actually saying, this army are saying, this is not my fight. Even though they line up for it, even though they shout about it, even though they're getting with all their mates and we're the guys and we'll kill dead things, and once he steps out, they're going, this isn't my fight. And you've got to understand that what fight's yours in this world, what giant that you need to fight and the giants that you need to leave alone. I suppose the easiest way to put it for you is a bit like this. When it's personal, it's your fight. When you've got a personal issue, it's your fight. If you've got a personal problem in your body, it's your fight. If I've got a sore knee or a sore elbow and I've got to believe something about the Word of God, it's my fight. That can be my giant. It's not yours, it's mine. So that helps me work out some battle strategies to realize, okay, this is up close, my pains are my fight. Some giants affect more than you, though. Some giants affect more than you. Well, what do you mean by that? And we're trying to work out, I've got to slay the right giant. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, some giants in your world will affect your children. So that means the fight's yours. That means that they might affect your family, so you realize, okay, this is a family issue, so that becomes my fight. So I realized I've got to take and go to battle because there are things in my family. I'm going to tell you a story, but now I'm looking at my daughter and I just remembered. There was one day I was sitting, I didn't plan to say this, you all right with me sharing this? Now you know it's 20 minutes at the end. But I came in from working one night and I know that surprised you, I was working, but I came home one night and it was maybe about 1 or 2 in the morning. And my head was spinning with all the different people I talked to. And I was tired, and I sat in the living room, and I switched on the TV, and I said, I'll just let my brain crash here and get taken away somewhere in the madness in the world. And I was sitting, the door was behind me into the living room, and a shadow came in. Now, the light's on in the room, and a shadow moved into the left-hand side of the room, and it moved down along the wall. And I'm looking at the shadow, watching it the whole way around, and then it stopped right behind the TV. And I looked at it and I said, well, I knew who it was and I knew what it was. And I said, I don't care what you do. I'm not frightened of you. And I went on watching the TV. So the next morning I get up. Do you remember this or not remember it? You do remember it. It's your daddy's fault. Do you remember what age you might have been, Rachel? No. You were at school. I think you were anyway. I think she was in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th year. And the next morning, Rachel got up and she came to me and says, Daddy, I had a terrible night last night. And I says, what do you mean you had a terrible night? She says, this thing came into my room. And I felt it all around the room, and I felt frightened, and I didn't know what to do. And I struggled. He says, well, what did you do? He says, well, eventually I got the courage to shout, in the name of Jesus, go. I said, and what happened? She says, it left right away. And we can say amen, but I said, that's brilliant, Rachel, well done, you fought that. But in my heart, I stepped back, and I said, I left my daughter to fight what I should have fought. Are you understanding me? That was my fight that she had to fight. And that's in the context with some giants affect more than you. And that thing that came in that night, I had the opportunity to totally decimate it and take it out by the roots, but I didn't because I was tired, I was lazy, I couldn't be bothered, or I thought, not another demon, or whatever it was that I thought. And it was so evident because of the shadow that it cast, and I didn't deal with it. And here we have this Goliath stepping out. And this Goliath is looking and is affecting every soldier and every soldier's family. Because when those soldiers were lying for battle, the truth was, well, they weren't harvesting their harvest. They weren't bringing food in for their families. They actually, I don't know whether you know this, but when they went to war then, it was a bit like you had to pay for the privilege. Because when you went, you had to get people to send food to you. And that's why David was carrying the food for his brothers, because they brought the food from their family to feed them. So it wasn't that the king fed you or the army fed you. It was your family that fed you. So it's an effect. So this Goliath was actually doing and affecting every family that day. So sometimes you need to ask the question. You need to look at your life and say, is this my fight? Is this my fight? And I think that all the people on the battlefront that day were thinking, is this my fight? And they were saying no, but David did ask, God, is this my fight? I believe that he asked that and he came up with the answer, this is my fight and I'm going to war with it. So I want to say this to you just in the kickoff and the start of this today. You've got to see the choice that lies before you with every giant, with every difficulty, with every problem that comes knocking on your door. You've got to work out in a nanosecond, is this my fight or do I leave this? And you can't just shrink back because of the army when they were in fear. You've got to make the decision. You've got to see the choice. And if you see the choice, you've got to ask the question, Lord, is this my fight? Are you actually speaking to me? Is it me that has to go up and go to battle here? Not, well, it's somebody else's and I don't have to. Look, I have done. It wasn't like that, because the whole army were all there thinking, I don't believe I can beat this giant. And I wonder just today, is there people here today actually, and that's your attitude? I don't think I can beat this giant. Yet God said all things are possible to those who believe. All things. God says you're more than an overcomer. You're a conqueror. You know, he says so many things in the Bible to say, well, that's contrary to what you think. So I just want to pitch that so you can get a handle on it. But all these guys seem to be saying that I don't think he can win. I wonder how many people have that mindset over simple things. Simple things that just needle at you, but you can't seem to overcome or conquer. Habits that you've never actually slain because you think, I can't be bothered. And somewhere you need to stop. Maybe the giant is a fear, maybe it's a shame, maybe it's the depression, maybe it's weariness, maybe it's just something that's got in through the door that you're still promoting, that you shouldn't be promoting or allowing to live. But there's always a choice, and David had a choice. The army seen the giant and thought, that giant is too big to fight. And David thought, that giant is too big to miss if I had a stone in a sling. And it just depends how you enter the fray and get in the battle. But David certainly knew it was his fight because he had courage. Something come up on the inside of him. And he thought, okay, I'll fight him. He made a decision that he says, this seems like mine. He had a choice, but choice has to come with courage. It has to come with courage. When I came to pioneer this church, I remember, I need to think what way to put this because God said something to me and Kate came and had a word for me. And Kate, that Kate, they're always smirking at. But Kate came and gave me a word and she says, listen, I had this, I don't know whether it was a dream or it was just cheese. But she said, listen, do you know the wee nursery rhyme, Billy Goat Gruff? Okay, and the three goats and they want to go and eat in the meadow, and there's a troll that lives under the bridge. And they all work out, there's a troll there, and I can't remember the story, but the little one goes and the troll comes out and says, I'm going to eat you. And the wee one says, don't eat me, I'm all bony and I'll stick in your teeth and all this sort of stuff. So the troll says, okay, and the second one went the same thing. And of course, when it came to the third one, it was a bit like, and Kate was saying, Lewis, you're Billy Goat Gruff. I said, rough? She says, no, gruff. I said, okay. And of course, Billy Goat Gruff knocked the pan out of the troll. And so they all get to the meadow to feed. But not long after that, the Lord said to me and spoke to me personally, said, Lewis, I want to let you know, you're not the first person I asked to pioneer this church. You're the third. And it just sort of tied in that way. But I often think about the other two that God asked. And they were saying, it's not my fight. And I'm just wondering, I wonder, did they miss something? I don't know, because there's something about you got to have the courage to grab and go forward. But these guys, for some reason, had a choice and chose not to go. And you could be sitting with something that you're choosing not to go when God's screaming at you. Psalm 139, and we've read it so many times. You've read it and you think often about it. And it says, your eyes saw, this is David writing, my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed or fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. And it's a bit like the Lord saying, look, I've shaped and fashioned things for you. But you've always got a choice whether you pursue them or don't pursue them. Believe me, God doesn't fashion something you're going to walk into it without your choosing it. And sometimes we think sovereignty means that God says, well, you know what? I decided how you're going to finish your days. And God said, I laid out a plan and said, do you want to choose this? And sometimes we just need to take the plan. And so often we don't take the plan because somehow we subscribe to the God of fate. God is actually saying, your life, I have planned, I've tailored, purposed victories for you if you'll go in the battle. You see, we're all called to be giant slayers. We're all called to deal with the enemy in our world. We were always called to be overcomers. We're always called to be people that won in battle. And it's been fashioned that way, but we've got to choose it. And it's a bit like when God says, when he gets the children of Israel up on the mountain, he says, listen, I lay before you today curses and blessing. Please choose to be blessed in your life. Please choose it. God says, here's the big choice. You can be a failure or you can be a success. And we go, oh, we want to succeed. But when it comes to it, we don't grab the courage that he's for us. And we kind of miss it or shrink back. Then there's another type of battle, and I want to share it. I'm going to put it this way. There's a battle to be fought for the JVC clan. The JVC clan. I'm sure you've read clan in the Bible so often. If you go to the Old Testament, it's just full of God talking about clans, and the clan of this and the clan of that. And there's one day the Lord spoke to me just during COVID, when we were in here and there was only 3 of us in the church and we're Zooming or whatever we were doing. And the Lord he pointed out 2 people to me in the church. They both happened to be here that night, so that shrinks it down. He said, well, there's this person's the clan person. And so is this person. I says, right. And one's dead and one left because of choice. I went, wow, that's real interesting. And as I looked at it, I went, wow, you see, God chooses clans and people to be part of things to fight in a certain way. It's nearly like a tartan. Do you remember the tartan when you were growing up? Anybody remember that? If you remember the tartan gangs, you're really old. My granda told me about them. But there's always a choice. And Goliath was threatening a nation, and the clan of Israel or the clans within Israel were meant to fight, and they didn't. But you've got to ask yourself, is this my battle? Is this what you've called me to? Is this my fight? And you've got to be sure and clear in your mind about it. Is this the one that he's called me to fight? And David really knew, he got hold of, this is my fight. I know this is my fight. God's called me to this fight. And you see, here's the thing. God calls us to fight. He doesn't call us not to be fearless. You don't need to be fearless, but you still need to be fighting. But courage is going forward when you're full of fear. Does that make sense? And I think a lot of Christians think, no, I can't fight. I'm full of fear. Yeah, no, so are the rest of us. But we'll just charge anyway and say, let's go. Sure, who cares? Sure, you only die once. Let's go for it. Let's get into them. But somewhere, stop trying to get rid of your fear and run forward with fear. Because that's the thing that God so often calls us to. Look, just trust in me and allow me to fight for you. Another thing I want to bring to your attention here today is you need to see spiritually when others see naturally to fight the right fight. You need to see spiritually when other people just see naturally, because lots of people see naturally in this world. 1 Samuel 17 and 47 just points something out to us. He says this, and all this assembly, this is David saying, this is why I'm fighting. That all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, but for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. He's saying, I want everybody to know that this battle lies in God's hands, and I'm charging in his name. I'm moving forward because my faith and my heart is caught up by him. And that's how you ditch fear. You're more interested when you're running forward. Are my lungs going to work right to the end of this road? You just run and think, I'm going to trust in him. But fear goes away when you've got something burning in your heart. You see, the truth is, when the battle's not yours, you'll be fighting for another. You're not fighting for your own honor. You're fighting for his honor. And David, as he charged that day against the Goliath, was saying, everybody needs to know that God's in heaven and he's the deliverer. He was fighting for another's honor. And if you're thinking, am I fighting the right giant? If you're fighting for someone's honor, you most likely are. But when you're fighting for you, So there's somewhere that you can lock in, I know I'm going to fight the right giant. Why? Well, and I'm making a choice and I've got courage. And the courage is for someone else's honor and it's not mine. And that's what David's doing, because he recognized that day that the enemy, that Goliath that he was chasing down, We're saying, I'm connected to God and I want to have my connection with the Lord. Somehow he knew, this is my assignment. To honor God when other people won't. This is my assignment. I'm not to just fill in the ranks of the average. There's somewhere that God said, this is your fight. This is the one I've called you to. Get up and run and charge and challenge rather than shrink back. Some Christians fight everything they see. Some Christians fight every person that they meet, every concept that they're looking at. They want to fight everything that moves, and I'm thinking about it and saying, you need to slay the right giant. How do you know that's your giant? Well, I don't like the idea that that's wrong. They want to fight every person. They want to fight every injustice, and there are lots of injustices. They're even trying to fight battles that Jesus has already won. I'm being serious. There's lots of people wanting to charge what Jesus said. I've already dealt with that. I've already dealt with that. And they're getting so mixed up. They're not understanding their assignment. They're running at the wrong thing. And Jesus won victories on the cross, and people are sidelined and distracted, as I said. And they're not called to battle that. The truth is, if you're going into battle, you want to say, God, I want to make sure my connection is clear and it's secure and I'm stable. You want your connection stable when you're going to deal with the giant, no matter where you are or what you're facing. You don't want to be a loose wire. Made me smirk when I wrote that down. You don't want to just have sparks of hope. You want to have a current flow with him. Like you say, I'm connected, and you know that you're connected. You don't want to be running hot and cold. You want to make sure, hey, I'm getting into battle here, and I know that the battle is important. You don't want to fight the wrong fight. You don't want to fight the wrong fight, and every fight isn't the wrong fight, by the way. And we've already indicated some that touch you are your fight, some that touch your family are your fight, some that touch this church are your fight. But not everything is your fight. You don't know what's happening in the world. Oh, well, I've got the media. No, you don't know what's happening. You're here in a part of a story. And yet so often people want to kick off and get involved in a fight that they can't affect. Saul couldn't fight Goliath that day. Why not? It wasn't his fight. Well, why wasn't this fight? He had already disconnected from God in 1 Samuel 15. He had walked in disobedience. He had rejected the Lord's ways. It wasn't his fight. And it's sad, but it wasn't his fight. But you got to connect boldness to wisdom when you're going to battle. In the book of Galatians, Paul starts to speak in Galatians 5:1, and it says, for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm. And that stand, I think standing is one of the greatest ways to do battle. Just stand. Because the Bible always talks about stand firm then. And here it's saying, hey, Jesus said, I set you free with freedom. Just stand your ground. You don't need to strike out. Just stand your ground. Just stand and trust. Just believe and don't move. And he says, so many giants fall when you stand. Yet when we read this, we realize you still got to fight giants. But you do it so often by standing true with what he said, as opposed to using your mouth to try and tear someone down. So many people get robbed of a victory and not overcoming because they're not standing firm. You've got to have a right mindset if you're going to battle a giant. I know there are many giants that come in the room with you today. And all it takes is for you to say, no more, and stand. I'm taking my stand with the King. That's it. I'm drawing the line. I'm not moving back. This is my fight. And somewhere you need to think about that. And I suppose if I said the truth is good, isn't it, in church? I think we should probably talk it more often. If I think about giants and I think about their might and I think about their power that they carry, the right mindset to face a giant is every giant will fall because the battle of sin and death has been won. And you might be going, what? But we always fight from victory to victory. So if that's the truth, then God has fashioned a slayer on the inside of every believer. And really the truth is, the battle that needed to be won was over sin and death, which Jesus conquered. Which really puts you and I in a place where we don't need to worry about how big the giant is or what he's saying. We just need to remember that we have authority as we stand in him to deal with this enemy. And that's why it's a stand. Hold on, Jesus has won this fight. Jesus has won this fight. You've no power over me. You've no authority in my life. You cannot push me. You cannot shove me. I can stand here and you can't move me. You know the wee boy that sits down and his mum's telling him, sit down. And he sits down, he's up again. Told you to sit down. He sits down, then he's up again. I'm not going to tell you again. If you don't sit down, when your daddy comes home, he's going to sort you out. And the wee boy says, well, I'm sitting down, but I'm standing up on the inside. Sometimes that's the way you need to be. I'm standing up on the inside. You do not have to yield to that enemy because he shouts and he's screaming at you. You don't need to do that. Get the right mind. This is a spiritual battle. So just turn up, as we said the other week. The outcome always rests on what Jesus has done before you. It's not about our actions or the right words, but whom we trust. You just realize, hey, I'm with him and I'm going to be okay. Because it affects you when you believe that. In Galatians 3 and verse 13, really hear what it says. I'll just go back a couple of verses. And it says, Christ redeemed us from the curse. In other words, the failure. In other words, not succeeding. Christ said, I set you free from being a loser. Because the curse, he redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hanged on a tree. Jesus said, I'm going to hang on the tree to secure your victory. I'm secure in a victory because people are trusting in laws. People are trusting in their strength. But when you trust in me, then you enter into the realm where you've got victory. And you can't be beaten. You can't be taken out. You will not be pushed over. You will, once you stop listening to the rhetoric and the lies that so often come into your mind that you can't or you'll not overcome, once you stop that and take your stand, no more. I'm not believing that. That's when you start to win. That's when you start to overcome. That's when you start to see strength coming into you. There's no power and there's no harm and there's no curse. In Isaiah 53, it tells us this. And this is something probably that we need to think about. Just for a minute, in verse 5, it says this, but Jesus was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. But he was pierced for our sin, so when you sin, he was punished for it. It's been dealt with. He was crushed. He was trampled on, so to speak, for our iniquities, the things that we done wrong. And upon him, he was beaten, chastised. He took our punishment. So how come that you run with guilt? How come that you run with shame? How come that you're down for 3 days or 3 weeks because you sinned? When he bore that, you're trying to fight something that's already been won. We need to ditch that. We can turn from it, and we should, but we can't carry the guilt and shame of it because it's been dealt with, and we're just reading it to you. And that's when we're trying to fight a fight that's not our fight because Jesus fought it and won. Does that make sense? And you can nurse poor old me as long as you want, but that's all it is poor old me. Somewhere you get back up on your feet real quick and say, Lord, I'm going to keep running with you. I mean, when it comes to faithfulness, Jesus is faithful. When it comes to healing, there I talked about him. Healing is part and parcel of who he is for our mind, our soul, and our spirit. Verse 11, would you hear what it says in Isaiah 53? Once I find it, and I read the wrong one. Out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many people accounted righteous. He makes people accounted righteous. He's looking and saying, I have made you righteous because you're in me. We touched that on Wednesday night. When you're trusting him, he says, you're righteous. But how often have you thought, I've made a mess and I can't even look at God? Does anybody ever get there? Do you know that's a giant that knocks your door? He's probably giving you a booting. He's kicking you and he's trailing you around the house and saying, well, you're a bit of a gance and you're a slobber and you're a hypocrite and you're an imposter. But not when you read the Word of God, not when you see that Jesus dealt with that devil and that giant. He says, it's done with, now get on with life. Start looking to me and be empowered. Stop listening to the rhetoric of lying giants. I think it's time for me to shut these down and just live for God. There's a righteous blessing we've got, and you need that for the fight. It's been given to you. I'm going to make a statement here. We fight in the shadow of what's already been won. We fight in the shadow of what's already been won. I'm going to turn to a psalm here. And probably, hopefully, give you a bit of insight to this. Psalm 121. I love this psalm. I lift up my eyes to hills from that one. Verse 5. Now listen to this. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade. By the way, that should be shadow. I don't know why this says shade. Psalm 91, we dwell in the shadow. The Lord is your keeper, the Lord is your shade on your right hand, or on your shadow. And if I just call that a shadow, I want to say some things about shadow and shade. It's important, and just as I stumbled across this, I started to think about it. A shade is different from a shadow. I'm sure you know that. But every shade involves a shadow. But not every shadow involves shade. I know that's a bit of a, think about it. A shadow mimics what you do. A shadow mimics and takes shape. And God says, I'm your shadow. And what you're doing, I follow with you. So if I point at you, maybe he'll point at you. But there's a shadow, because he says, I'm your shadow. And if you allow that to touch you and realize shadows mimic God's look, and it's like a friendship moves and your shadow moves, it's a bit like that. A student shadows a teacher. If you say to the Lord, Lord, I love you, he reciprocates that and says, I love you. If you sing to him, the Bible already tells us he sings over us. He's like a shadow, and that's what the psalmist is saying. I'm going to read it again. The Lord is your keeper, the Lord is your shadow on your right hand. He's the one that's moving with you and I. And if you stop and just consider that for a moment, he's saying, I respond in kind to faith stance and moving forward. Well, what do you mean? He's saying, well, I am your shadow. If you bring God a gift, he will bring a gift to you. You should try it. But he does. The psalmist is saying that God, well, he does say, he says that God follows you wherever you go. He sends out his, some people talk about watchdogs. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me, pursue me, but in the sense of shadow. He says there will be a shadow at your right hand. And in other words, if I reach out my hand to touch you and pray for you, by faith, all of a sudden there's a shadow that comes with those that are walking with him. As you can see, so if I stay here and reach out to you, or if I reach out to you, there's someone else that reaches. And I want you to catch hold of that when the Lord says, I'm your shadow. That when you move in faith, I'm moving with you. Does that make sense? At the right hand, he says, I'm moving at the place of honor. When you're honoring me, I'm moving with you and I'm establishing my kingdom through you. I've got you in my mind because you're bringing honor to me. And as you just move with my kingdom, I want to bring honor. Why? Because you influence people on my behalf. And that's what David was doing against this giant. I want you to see that the battle belongs to others as well. The battle belongs to the others. Josiah, which means Yahweh grants. And 2 Chronicles, because I think I said in Wednesday night, I'm going to show you a place where people fight wrong giants, and here's one here. This is 2 Chronicles 35:21. And what do you hear? In fact, I'm going to read verse 20. You'll not have it, but I have it here. After all this is Josiah, and he's a king. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, went up to fight at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went up to meet him. Now listen, this is a king in Judah, and he sees a Pharaoh coming up, and he says, I'm going to have a bit of him. But he sent envoys to him. This is Necho, the Pharaoh. He sent envoys to Josiah saying, what are we to do with each other, king of Judah? I am not coming against you this day, but against the house with which I am at war. And God's commanded me to hurry, so cease opposing God who is with me, lest he destroy you. Nevertheless, Josiah did not turn away from him, but disguised himself. There's another guy done that, a king Ahab, who was a devil worshipper, in order to fight with him. And he did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but came and fought in the plain of Megiddo. And the archer shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, take me away, for I'm badly wounded. So his servants took him away. This is the terrible, terrible indictment, because they take him away and the king dies when he was already warned, don't fight. He was already told, what have you got to do with me? I'm not your giant. I'm no threat to you. I'm not coming against you. And God told me to fight these guys. He was going to fight the Assyrians, I think. And he thought, no, I'm going to fight you because you're a giant, so I want to fight. And he couldn't get it in his head that he shouldn't be fighting. Now, the thing about Josiah, he was a king. The Bible says that, hey, he done things that were right in the eyes of the Lord, but this wasn't right in the eyes of the Lord. So he goes out to battle, he gets wounded, and he dies. Because he wouldn't listen, because he wouldn't stop and inquire or speak to the Lord. Somewhere he just thought, here's a giant, I better fight him. He didn't listen. He wasn't called to the fight. And it's important to understand the fight that you're called to. And he wasn't anointed for the battle. He became a fool. He wouldn't listen to what was being said. He just listened to his own idea. But the Lord always equips people to win. But he was at the wrong battle. And if you go into the wrong battle, you're going to leave that battle scarred or mortally wounded or die. And giants draw people into battle. Injustice will draw you into a battle, but you need to make sure it's your battle. By talking with the Lord. Your emotions will draw you into battle. How dare they speak to, and you'll get into a battle and you'll go to defend someone that's not your battle. I know that I've done that in my life and realized, whoa, this is a wrong move. Political battles might not be your battle. Maybe if they are, well, that's cool. But hey, do you know what? Sometimes you got to refuse to fight in this world with world ideology. Please hear me. Our war is a different war. I'm not saying we shouldn't deal with injustices. I'm saying you need to know it's your battle. And you're not just someone that's a participant or someone sitting, not a participant, but you're a spectator. And you're just hooing on the sidelines. If it's your battle, you're going to be in the fight. Not just screaming or yelling or making noise. And somewhere we got to learn how to deal with the giants that God's called us to fight. I mean, here's the truth. This is me. This is how I live. I'm not asking you to live like this. This is how I live. I look at the government as much as I think they're as mad as a box of frogs at times. The whole cabinet. I look at it and I think they're trying their best. I know we all have better ideas than them. I get that, but somewhere they're trying their best. And they don't have God, so hey, look, they're stuck. I can get that, and God says, just pray for them. And if it's your battle to help them or help direct them, knock yourself out. It's just not my battle. So I will not be fighting it. So don't come to me and think, do you not think, Lewis? The answer is, no, I don't. You think it. I'm all right for you to think it. But don't come and expect me to fight your battle and your giant. That's not my battle. God never called me to that. God called me to go to different places in the world and do things in the world, and that's my battle. That's where I go. That's why I go to Russia, and that's why I go to these places. Those are my battles. And if you've got a battle, fight your battle, but stop gancing about it and get in the fight and win the war. But just don't expect other people to run with your battle. Is that okay? Stop thinking that you're on your white horse and charging and everybody should be doing that. No, they shouldn't. We're called to battles and giants, and it's okay to have a giant. But just don't expect everybody to run with it. Are you all right with that? You all still talking to me? If I were you, I wouldn't. You see, the truth is the enemy wants to stop you. He's seeking to stop your assignment. And we all have assignments. He wants to stop the slayer in you. And you need to know your call and live in purpose and slay the giants because they're hidden your passion so often. I mean, if you've got a giant, you'll see you've got a passion for something. Say, here's a giant, I need to stop it. And your call is so often aligned with your passions. Maybe with a particular people group or what you've got an affection for the poor or the sick or the hungry or whatever. Or some things that you hate will reveal the ministry in you, but you've got to understand you've got ministry. And that's where the warrior becomes sharpened. But if you're just saying, I hate that and doing nothing, it's not your battle. It's your battle when you enter the fray. Do you get me? Not just something you just don't like or want to shout about. You've got to see the right fight. The right fight generally starts with something that breaks your heart or that you can bring healing to or it makes you cry or it matures you. Jesus moved with compassion. So I know what you're compassionate about is something that God might be calling you to. But if you only hear the call and don't go in the battle, it's not your call. Are you getting me? Because it's got to be mixed with courage. That means, hey, this is my call. You get up and you do something. You don't just sit and say, should you not do it? No, we shouldn't. It's not my call. It's not my giant. It's your giant. I'm not fighting him. He's too small. No, he's too big. Whatever. But I just want you to think about it and realize not everybody fights the same fight. I wrote this thing down. Maybe the younger people will get it, so I'll just say to them, stop gaslighting yourself. So, sometimes if you understand gaslighting is when you put a negative spin on someone, but lots of people go about gaslighting themselves and they talk themselves out of something, talk themselves out of fights. Stop gaslighting yourself and think to yourself, do you know what, I need to learn how to go and fight. Don't gaslight yourself because of what other people think. You've got to align yourself with the Lord. 1 Samuel 17:16. It says, put it up on the board for me because, and David said to the men who stood by, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, unbeliever, that he should defy the armies of the living God? He knew it was something holy he was called to. Something that was holy. He realized that the fight was more than between two armies. It was a spiritual fight. It was a battle between the Lord and his army. He realized that this giant was coming against the covenant of God. And David wanted to align with the covenant of God. And if you align with the covenant today, you're aligning with a better covenant, better promises. It's built on better promises. And we align ourselves with everything that David had plus. And we align ourselves through faith and we live through grace. Or by grace. We've got to listen to his voice. Be directed, strategize, align. You know, David just done, if you read like in 1 Samuel, just in that place that we're looking, 5 times, he says, I'm going to inquire the Lord. Just keep saying, I'm going to inquire the Lord. I just got to keep talking to the Lord. He wants to go and talk with him and get the directive. I mean, Jesus does this also. 7 times he does it. Jesus also does it when Philip, he said to Philip, hey, Philip, where are we going to feed all these people, 5,000 people to get fed? And he said this to test him. He knew what he was going to do. And Andrew comes up and he says, hey, of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, but it's not going to help. He didn't have the understanding, but Jesus knew what he was going to do. It was covenant promises. Covenant. Remember, we got a better covenant when we're battling. We got a better covenant when we're battling. We need to cling to the Lord. And cling means we're not a parasite, but we're hugging. To cling means not like the parasite. We'll hold on and hug him and hold him close. It's really a different way. And you hold him so much that the reality of him is bigger than the problem that you look at or the giant. We slay giants by the strength of his promise. Deuteronomy 4 says, if you seek him, you'll find him. Psalm 121 tells us he'll protect us. John 3:16 says he'll save us. Romans 8:28 says he works everything together. Philippians 1:6 says I started to work in you and I'm going to finish this whole thing. So don't you dare be quitting because you're halfway through. You just push on and keep taking down every giant that you see. Start being defiant. Probably the last thing I want to put to you is to see the conflict terms change. If you go at a devil or a giant, the conflict terms can change. I just want to read one scripture to you. It's 1 Samuel, actually 18, and just a couple of verses, 3 and 4, and it says this. David had a friend called Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of Saul. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as he loved his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of his robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, even the sword and his bow and his belt. He gave him everything and said, I will serve you because I see you as the anointed of God. He loved him in the moment he seen him. He heard him. He watched him on the battlefield. He heard him testify to his daddy about how he killed the giant by faith. And he humbled himself. But he didn't fall in love with the hero. He fell in love with the King of Kings because that's what he was looking at. He knew there was a greater king that David served as he slayed the giant. See, the problem isn't the giants in your life. It's sin and death. And if you hang out with Christ, he's already dealt with sin and death. The giant screams will kill you, but it's been dealt with by Jesus. But you need others to walk with you at times. We need other people to run with us at times. Maybe we need to fight as a clan at times because there are giants that you can't beat on your own, that you need someone alongside. Well, how would you know that? Well, you keep getting beat up by the same giant because you won't have someone alongside you. And you need a friend like Jonathan who comes alongside. Friends will let you in, but they'll never let you down, in case you're wondering what a friend is. Friends will let you in, and they definitely won't let you down. They'll love you as their own soul. They're visible, and they're transparent. David was a shepherd boy who befriended a king. And if you see the Lord above every friendship that you have, in that relationship, that person becomes your BFF, your best friend forever, because Jesus is above it. Well, why would he do this? Why would he do it? I want to close this out because I've called out as usual. Covenant holds you in accountability with people. Let me just mention somebody else. You ever heard of a man called Joshua? There's one day Joshua found himself in a leadership position as Moses had died. And 5 times in Joshua 1, God says, Joshua, be strong and be courageous. 5 times. Be strong and courageous. Now, when God's saying this to him, Joshua is 71 years of age, 3 months and 2 days. But he was about 71. When he was 31, he used to chase giants. He was one of the spies that went into the land and says, we don't care about them, we're going to knock our pan in. But here we are, 40 years later, and God's saying, Joshua, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. And I'm thinking, here's the giant slayer, and you're telling him to be strong and courageous, Lord. When he's talking about being strong, when God says be strong and courageous, God is saying, tackle this giant. Tackle what's coming at you. Just like you were when you faced the giants in the promised land. Be God-focused is what he's saying. Be God-focused, be strong and courageous. Because anything that God commands you, he enables you. Any fight that he brings up, you've already won. So this is what he's doing when he gets this guy, Joshua. He's actually doing a creative miracle when he speaks this out 5 times. Well, how do you work that out? Well, he was an old man. At 31, he could take down a giant, but at 71, it's a different story. And I believe that as God's speaking to him, and he says it again and again and again, because he's building him up on the inside, and he's actually recreating the strength of a 31-year-old man in this 71-year-old guy that enables him to lead an army and conquer a land. You see, when we stop for a minute and think about it, we just realize that Joshua at this moment was being reassigned. Because God never put him out the pasture. God said, I want to restore strength and courage this day. I want to restore it. Because if you are focused on your faith, that's a faith that's going to be kept. Because he's with you wherever you go. You just got to see the choice. You got to see the spiritual battle. You got to realize that what battle belongs to you. You got to realize that the terms change on the way through. But God wants to restore you to your former days of running in a battle. So I'm going to leave this here. What's the last worship piece? We need a move. Okay, come up, please. And why I'm leaving it here, because I realize that, as I was putting this together, the Lord says there are people that need to be renewed to fight. Need to be renewed to fight. As I looked at Joshua, and God, someone says, you need to be strong for this fight. And you need to be renewed because you're running and getting defeated in every turn. Because God needs to work something recreative in you. And as we come to this and we think about fighting giants and fight the right fight, maybe it's time for you just to be redressed. Because you can't be too old for this fight. You can't be too old for it. If you're 70s and plus, God says, I can renew you to a 30-year-old. But you got to see the right giant. So let's stand to your feet as Rachel plays keyboards. So I'm going to appeal right now. If you're saying, do you know what? I need God to restore strength in me. Come down now. Any of you people need strength in you, get down now. I'm just like, it doesn't matter, I'll call you up this thing. You do me. You're all right. See, they're freaked out to get up here and I can't move. It's terrible. I'll take it that you're standing because you do need it. But let's get before him to fight the right giant. Say, I realize that I'm not running in all cylinders. But just get in line and say, Lord, you know what?